All right, everybody. It says it, so we are. We are live here on the Sportz Truth. You have myself, the Cleat Geek, Mike Valentine, and we haven't come up with a cool name yet for Jason, but we'll get him one before it's all said and done here.
We'll work on it.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it. I'll talk about why Jason is here and why Mitch is not here in just a second. But before we get too far in, let's do this walk-up music. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have got a bunch of stuff to get to today. We are going to talk about tons and tons of stuff. MLB is winding down. NFL is really kicking in. The trade deadline. There have now been, I know in the promo things I was doing, there were 2 trades. Now there's been 3 if you haven't seen. So we'll talk about all 3 of those trades here in just a moment. We will do our 4-pitch talk. We'll talk college football. We'll do 4-down territory. Of course, Jason is the Mets writer for www.welikesportspc.com, so we got to get in some Mets stuff with him. We're also going to do what kind of impression will Tom Brady have on the Raiders? That's been made official today as well. We'll talk more about that. What's the biggest thing that college football was doing wrong? You may or may not agree with me, but you know what? I don't care. I'm going to give you the opinion anyway. All right. Then we're going to look at a disturbing quote from an NBA player. We'll get into that in a moment. Poor Jason's like, what? I didn't tell him about that. We'll get
that's new.
That's new. Should MLB do anything different with its playoff broadcast? We will talk about that extensively as well. I've seen some things on Twitter where some of you out there in the world are not real happy with some of the things they're doing, some of the networks they've got it on, and some of the play-by-play people that they've put on there. Jason and I will discuss further. And as we said, there have been some trade in the NFL today, 3 big ones. And we'll talk about what they mean today and what they mean in the future. All right, Jason, how you been, buddy?
Been doing all right. It's been busy at work, but all good. Been trying to watch as much of the playoffs as I can and the NFL. And before you know it, the NBA is going to be back. So very, very exciting. How about you?
I'm in the same boat. I mean, I'm not a real huge NBA guy, but it's coming. I will be a bigger NBA guy if the Suns, since I live outside of Phoenix, if the Suns actually do something this year, I will be a bigger NBA guy. But when
luck.
they don't do anything, yeah, I know. Thanks. When they don't do anything, I don't do much of anything. So I'm not a big NBA guy, but if the local team does well, then I will follow, and it'll kind of pull me into the NBA a little bit. So
very cool.
You have got to be really happy here with your Mets, right, buddy?
Yeah, let's go Mets. I mean, you talk about 0-5 to OMG. It's been a wild ride for the Mets. It's been a very pleasant surprise. I go back to when I started writing about them the beginning of this year, and it was a bit of a slog and pretty painful. And now it's an exciting thing to write about, and they're in the NLCS. Go figure.
Right, and he does write for us. Again, that's for www.welikesports with a Z, PC.com. Not only does Jason do the New York Mets, but he also does the rhyming football one. So he does the New York Jets as well. I've always thought that was because, we didn't want to stress out those New Yorkers too much. So we made sure they rhymed all that.
And you've got the Brooklyn Nets on top of it, just for good measure.
Right? Just one-syllable words for the people in New York. So,
we can handle that.
We can handle that. All right. I'm going to do some quick hits real quick here. Now, Jason's not been on the show with us for a little bit, so I'm going to kind of coach Jason through. I tell you what, before I do the quick hits, let's talk about Mitch Middlebrook for a second. Mitch is going to update me if anything changes. I can tell you he messaged me earlier today. He's having some medical issues, so he couldn't do the show today. We wish Mitch the best. I will update everybody on our Twitter account, which our main account is at hang on. I lost it. It is, boy, it's really great when it's this early in the show and you're already doing it. So it's at the 643 and out pod. You can wish Mitch Middlebrook specifically a good, good stay, a good recovery from whatever he's dealing with right at the moment, which we're not sure yet. So it's not that I'm trying to hide anything. We just don't know yet. So he will be at Mitchell Brook 52 on Twitter. So hit up either account and take care of that with Mitch, and we certainly do. I know Jason and I both wish Mitch a speedy recovery.
Yeah,
so,
get well soon, Mitch.
All right. So let's do some quick hits here. We got 3 things. Jason, I'll give you all 3 of them. I'll let you figure out which one you want to talk about, and then we'll spend 60 seconds on one before we jump into our MLB 4-pitch talk. All right? So here are the 3 things. And just so the viewers know, Jason doesn't know what these things are going to be at all. So this is like smacking him in the face with it here, and he's going to pick one, and then we're going to go with it. All right?
5 minutes in, we're jumping in the deep end. Let's do it.
Right? We got to get wet right away, man. Got to get wet. Okay. So Game 5 between the Guardians and the Tigers was the most watched division series day game in 17 years. That's number 1, right? And they were saying, "Oh, it's the Detroit Tigers and it's the crappy Cleveland Guardians. Nobody's going to watch that." Well, yes, they did. So that's the first thing that you could talk about if you would like. The second quick hit here is, according to Barstool Big 12 on Twitter, because of his injuries that he has suffered this season, he is now available for his 8th season of eligibility in college football, and he is quarterback Cam Rising from the Utah Utes. So he can do another year of eligibility if he so chooses, which will be his 8th. And the third thing that we'll look at here is what I was teasing a little bit earlier, the quote from one NBA person, and his name is Joel Embiid. Let me tell you what he said. I'm banking this is probably going to be what we're going to talk about, but I like the other 2 really well too.
Yeah.
Joel Embiid said, "If I had to guess, I would probably never play back-to-backs for the rest of my career." Quote from him, not from his agent, not from one of his other players about him. That was a direct quote that he said over the weekend. So which one you want to talk about, Jason? The Guardians and the Tigers, the Big 12, or Joel Embiid?
Yeah, I think I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to pick 2. I'm going to touch on the Embiid thing really, really fast. That's asinine. I can't even believe somebody would say that plays in the NBA, making the kind of max money that he is making for essentially, playing basketball every day. So you know what you sign up for when you get into the league, and that's part of it. So, get with the program and play the game. So I'll leave that one aside. That's my opinion on that one. But I actually love the first one you brought up. The Guardians and the Tigers being the top, rated day game in 17 years. That's great. That's amazing. And it just kind of shows you that, and we'll probably talk a little bit about this in our ongoing conversation here, but fans pull for the underdogs. They love the underdogs. They love the smaller market teams. If you look at the Final 4 that's out there right now, you've got New York, Los Angeles, and Cleveland. So everybody outside probably New York and Los Angeles are going to be pulling for Cleveland. So you've got Cleveland and Detroit there. You've got the story that is Detroit coming from nowhere to make the playoffs. You got to root for teams like that. And then the Guardians, rookie manager, really strong, cultural, driven team. So very easy to root for. So I actually love that they were able to achieve that rating on TV.
Excellent. All right. And you even kept that under 60 seconds. You had like 4 or 5 more seconds to go, buddy. And that's
efficiency.
Your first time, too. Yeah. Efficiency. All right. So we talked about this a little bit. Now we're going to dive into this a little bit more, right, with our first question here on the MLB 4-pitch talk. So let's give us a little bit of background music. All right. As we go into the next section here, maybe. I don't know what this is going to do yet. Oh, a little bit of blues for us in the background. All right.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we talked about this just a second ago with this, the 4 teams that are left. Of course, your Mets are left. the New York Yankees, the LA Dodgers, and of course, the Cleveland Guardians. And there's 3 of them have the same thing, and one of them is a lot different. And what they're different is in their payroll. So let me give you the 4 payrolls, and then we've got some questions to discuss afterwards. So the Mets, $335 million payroll, the highest of all 4. The Dodgers come in second at $325 million payroll. The Yankees are not a distant third. They're right there with them at third, right? $302 million. And then the Guardians come in fourth at $103 million. So tell me what you think about those 3 payrolls first.
Yeah, so I mean, you hit the nail on the head. 3 of them are in the same zip code, and then you've got Cleveland. So it's really it's amazing to see what Cleveland has achieved there. Obviously, success in Major League Baseball has been trending towards buying those superstars. You look at the Dodgers, you've got Ohtani and Betts and Freeman. You look at the Mets, you've got Lindor. You look at the Yankees, you've got Aaron Judge, who just signed a new deal over the past year or 2. So it shows you that those big market teams just give themselves a lot more leeway and a lot more opportunities by being able to spend that money.
Correct. Now, so let's do some follow-up questions here. This is what we do on 4-pitch talk. We do 1 question, and then we do 3 more to do the 4-pitch instead of walk. We call it 4-pitch talk. All right. So do the Guardians have a chance to actually win the World Series, in your opinion?
Well, I think the music you played to start this section, Mike, was probably accurate in terms of playing the blues, because you got to be in it to win it. So, yeah, they have a chance. I don't think they have a very good chance. I mean, they obviously lost game 1 at Yankee Stadium. They're trailing today. It's 3-0 in the 5th inning. So I think it's going to take a minor miracle for them to pull this series out. Not impossible, but at the same token, I've thought for a long time the Yankees were kind of destined for the World Series, and still kind of feel that way.
Okay, so then, does MLB need a salary cap? Do we need to do something to make these teams more even, or is the current system okay?
Yeah, honestly, as a Mets fan, it's probably going to be surprising to hear me say this. I think they do. The disparity is just so crazy, and some of it comes down to the individual owners. They're all in it for different reasons. You've got one end of the spectrum. You got Steve Cohen saying, "I'm going to spend whatever I need to do. I want to win," similar to what George Steinbrenner used to do for the Yankees.
Right.
And then you've got Oakland, but Oakland's just Oakland. I think they had the lowest payroll. They're around $60 million or so, if I remember. But just the way that organization is run, they're probably run more for profit. These teams are all probably making money based on revenue sharing, but only some of them are going to provide a winner for their teams. And that's where I think the focus needs to be. And that salary cap at least balances the playing field a little bit for those smaller market clubs.
But that's the name of the game, right? Is to win money. They've all got shareholders. They've all got people that they need to answer to. So you're not going to be a shareholder very long. And honestly, you're not going to have a major league team very long if you don't make money. So I don't begrudge them for making money, right? I'm just not sure how much money that they all need to make, right? I don't know if you know, Mitch and I were talking about it a couple weeks ago. That particular lineup that they put together for the Detroit Tigers was less than $30 million for all 26 players. So it can be done, right? Cleveland's proven it. You can get to the playoffs with you don't have to spend $300 million to get to the playoffs, but it sure is nice, right?
Yeah, sure helps. Yeah.
Right?
And on the flip side of that, you look at the Mets last year, they spent a ton of money. They didn't make the playoffs. So it's very easy to mess that up too and just, spend frivolously, which means you don't win and you don't make as much money. So it's the double jeopardy there, if you will.
Right. That's the last thing you want to do is spend like a fiend and then not make any money, right? Okay.
Yep, exactly.
I think we've covered that.
Yep.
So then we're going to ask, we kind of hit on it here just a second ago. So does this mean that MLB teams must spend
Yep, lost you there for a second, Mike. But I think you're going towards spending 300 million. Do you need to make the playoffs? No, I don't think you need to make
I don't
the
know what
playoffs.
happened there.
Oh,
Something did. We're back, buddy.
yep, you're back. Okay. But yeah, I mean, spending 300 million, you don't have to do it to make the playoffs, but like you said, it sure does help, and it makes things a little bit easier. It makes that road a little bit easier. And quick score update is I open mouth and insert foot. The Guardians have now cut the lead to 3-1 for the Yankees in the top of the fifth inning. So hopefully they'll continue to motor along there.
So you're saying there's a chance, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So now I do want to talk about your Mets a little bit with this payroll, a little more specifically to you, because again, this is Jason Crom. He writes for us on www.weLikeSportsPC.com, and he writes for us with the Mets and the Jets. So talk to me a little bit about this high payroll. Again, it's $335 million, but there are really high players that they're paying money to that haven't been on this team all season long, right? And so what do you feel about that? Because you said earlier, hey, you can't spend frivolously and you can't not make the playoffs. So yes, okay, the Mets have made the playoffs, but they did spend frivolously, I guess we could say.
Yep. Yeah, and what you're seeing there is really the evolution of a new owner. You had Steve Cohen come in, he's the richest owner in Major League Baseball. He just figured he was going to spend his way to a championship. And he came to realize pretty darn quick that doesn't work. Made the playoffs one year. You've got Buck Showalter, one of the best managers of all time, running the team. Next year, they missed the playoffs. Buck Showalter's out. Bringing in a new president of baseball operations, David Stearns, who grew up as a Met fan, ironically, but really knows his stuff and got trained in Milwaukee, smaller market team. So knows about the fundamentals of putting a baseball team together. So yeah, I think Steve Cohen's continuing to pay for some of those mistakes in the past, but I kind of like the trajectory and the way that they're thinking about it. They've got a really solid farm system, some of which came through the fact that he paid for Verlander to play somewhere else, and he played for Scherzer to play somewhere else. But that got him really quality prospects to sort of fill the gap as they continue to evolve the organization. So I kind of like what they're doing. I mean, we're going to have a big case in point, which we'll probably talk about here in the offseason, is Pete Alonso, and we'll see what ends up happening there. But I kind of like the little bit more of a disciplined approach that Cohen's bringing to the Mets now.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get to Pete Alonso because we're going to do some Mets-focused questions here in a few moments, and we're going to get to Pete Alonso. Trust me.
Yep.
So if you spend $300 million and you don't make the playoffs, how big of a disappointment is that, right? How do you sell that to your stockholders, right? The San Diego Padres, right? I get it. Somebody has to win, somebody has to lose, but I mean, they spent a ton of money, and I guess they made the playoffs but got exited out. Not right away, but they did. They didn't make the Final Four. The Philadelphia Phillies are in the same boat. We'll talk about them here in just a little bit. They spent a ton of money and didn't even win a playoff series. How do you sell that to your stockholders?
You really don't. It's a horrible situation, and I point again to the Mets of last year. Spent all that money, didn't make the playoffs. It's completely different now. Scherzer, Verlander, gone, replaced by guys like Luis Severino and Sean Manaea. Really a completely different approach. And that's what happens. Owners want results when you're spending that much money, not making as much money. You better win. You don't win, there's going to be changes. And, I just use that as one case in point. Padres made a lot of trades at the deadline this year. Got them into a really good, solid playoff position. They didn't do anything with it. So you'll probably see some changes there. And, we'll talk about the Phillies here in a little bit, but another team that's got to be disappointed and salt in the wound, they lose to a division rival in the Mets. So yeah, there's definitely, I think, going to be some changes in the landscape there, especially within the National League.
I agree with you. And yes, you're 100% right. We're going to get really specific here on the Phillies in a few moments. And yeah, I think there's going to be some changes in several teams this off season. So we'll kind of discuss, right? Let's put this question up on the board for everybody to see here. And I also want to tell everybody, we've got some people with us live right now. Those people who are with us live can hop on the comment section. You just click the comment section and you can type in whatever you want. You can tell Jason how crazy he is or whatever you want to tell him, right?
I get that a lot.
So yeah, okay, well, we're going to get along real great then today.
Yeah.
So I do the same thing. I get it all the time as well. So as we're talking about stuff, for those of you who want to jump on and give your opinion as well, please be part of the show. Click on that comment section, and we'll put it up here on the screen just like we are this particular question. And it's this: should MLB do anything different with their playoff coverage? Jason, what do you think, bud? Do you like the playoff coverage? Do you not like it? What's going on right now?
I honestly don't like it. It's very confusing to me. Even if you pull up a guide to figure out what station to put on, it's like, well, which station do I put on? Which data analytics am I going to see by going to True versus TBS? What's on Fox? It's very, very confusing to me. I think they've overcomplicated it, pretty drastically.
I mean, they're trying to make money, right? That's the name of the game. So they sell the rights to this series to one streaming platform and the next one to the next streaming platform and all that. So I get what they're trying to do. I'm just not real sure if I'm happy with it, right? So let's talk about the broadcasters for a moment. Give me a broadcaster that you like, if you can, and then give me one that you think should just this guy should never broadcast another game in his life. Talk to me.
Yeah, I've actually really enjoyed the Fox team of who is it? Joe Davis, John Smoltz. Yeah, they've done a really solid job, I think. Now going back to the last series of the Yankees and the Royals, like Ron Darling, love Ron. Yeah, obviously I'm a Mets fan too, so that's part of it. I think he does a great job. But I think I woke up about 10 minutes ago from Bob Costas's last story in that series. I mean, he just needs to give it up at this point, stick to the Olympics, go do something else. But it's not working for baseball. And, the George Brett story is just not applicable to today's fan and to today's game. So those are my opinions on the broadcasters. But there's definitely some that are better than others this year.
Absolutely, you're channeling your inner Mitch Middlebrook right now because this was actually a question that I put up here because I knew he was going to be with us until everything else happened. And if you guys are just joining us and you're wondering, where does this guy keep getting all these good-looking men at? I regularly think because you're beside me and I'm really ugly, so it makes you look better. But so this is Jason Crum. He is a writer for us at www.welikesportspc.com. I keep waiting to mess that up as I say it so fast, but I'm good so far.
You're doing good.
So he does both the Mets and the Jets for us. We'll get to the Jets here in just a little bit. Right now, we're doing MLB 4-pitch talk, and then we will concentrate on the Mets here in just a little bit as well. So those of you who are with us can shoot your questions over to us. I will see the comments come up. I can put them up on the screen, and then we'll go from there. But I have to say that you have channeled your inner Mitch Middlebrook here with those things. He can't stand Bob Costas. If you go back through and you look at our main account, our main Twitter account, you'll be able to see where I've retweeted him a couple of times. Just killing poor Bob Costas on Twitter. And I have to agree with you. I like John Smoltz. I like what he brings from the pitching aspect. There's a guy who is with the Cincinnati Reds too. His name's Jeff Brantley, and he does a really good job with Reds games as far as that goes. He does the whole. He used to be a pitcher. He can kind of take you into the mind of a pitcher almost. And John Smoltz does a very good job of that as well. He even I love it when John kind of thinks 2 and 3 batters ahead. What should we do? Where who's going to warm up? Why are they warming up? And he'll give you all of that. So I do think, as you said, that John Smoltz does it really well. So does it bother you? And I think you pretty much already answered this. Does it bother you that the games are on different streaming networks? So let me ask you this. Can you currently get every network that all the MLB games are on?
Yes, I can. I just don't know where to go for each of the games at any particular time. So if they're going to be on all these streaming services, just be a little clearer on here's where you go to watch this game. I mean, even go back to the regular season for certain teams, you've got to have about 4 streaming services to watch every game over a week, whether it's, Peacock or MLB or, NBC, Fox. all this stuff. You Apple TV, you've got to
Yeah.
pay all these things if you want to watch all of your team's games. And it's gotten a little out of hand. And I know why they're doing it. You're absolutely right, to make money. But at the same time, it's just way too confusing for me.
But I have to say, at first I didn't like all of, because how, I don't know if you ever watched an Apple broadcast, but they'll put like the betting lines and all
Right.
that stuff up there. And I remember when I first watched it and I was like, man, get this crap off the TV. Just tell me what's going on in a game. I don't
Yep.
need all of this. And as I watched 4, 5, 6 of them, I started almost looking in the corners. It's like, okay, what are they put up in the corners now, right?
Yeah.
And I tell you another streaming service that does a really good job with it. If you've ever watched Mariners games, Root Sports does that really well. They don't do it near as much as what Apple TV does, so you're almost like hanging onto your seat, like, okay, what are they going to put on the screen next, right? But they do a really, really good job. If you don't have the MLB .TV and you've never seen Root Sports for Seattle Mariners, I'm giving them a free plug right now. They do a very excellent job with that. So let's look at our next to last question here on the topic of the playoff coverage, and that's this one. Do you like or have a problem with the manager interviews and all the other extra things that they try to do in the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't like it, to be honest with you, especially the manager interviews. Let the manager focus on the team, run the team. And honestly, what do you think you're going to get out of the manager? When you're
Right?
talking to them during the day, during the game, they're not going to tell you what they're going to be doing in the next inning or two. They don't want to give away that information, nor would I. So what
Right?
you're really going to get is answers like, yeah, to win this game, I think we probably need to score more runs than the other team. We know all that stuff. You don't have to waste the manager's time to tell us that. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of that stuff.
Right. That's why when the camera's focused in on all the coaches in the NFL, they're all like this, right? They're all doing
Exactly.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't, it's like you said, you're not going to get any kind of world beater information out of them or anything. I mean, you're just generic questions to them anyway. So
Right.
I don't know. I'm in the same boat with you. It's just
Yeah.
you don't need to leave those managers alone. Let them manage the game. Now, if
Right.
you want, sometimes I don't mind the whole miking up a player or something like that because it is kind of neat to get a player's perspective while they're
Sure.
out there on the field sometimes. But
Yeah.
again, even if that happens, right? And I'm sure that if they mic up a shortstop or something like that, and they put the glove over their face, and if you've ever wondered what they're doing, it's usually mouth open or mouth closed as to who's going to handle second base if there's a runner on first, right? That's what they're doing that for, because they have the pitch comm, they can hear. The shortstops usually do. Some teams, I guess, from what I understand, some teams have the whole infield with a pitch comm device in their hats, and I guess from my understanding, Major League Baseball will allow all the infielders to have them, but just not the outfielders. So it's an interesting piece there, but
Yeah.
yeah, not bad. But overall, you're right. I don't like it. You're not going to get any great. You're not going to be like, oh wow, I didn't know that when they're talking to the manager, right? So it's like
Exactly.
it's a waste of time, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything that you would like to see with these playoffs right now that they're not giving us? I mean, if Jason Crom was running Fox Sports and he's like, okay, man, this is what we got to give the fans, would there be something additional that you would love to give the fans that we're not getting right now, Jason?
Yeah, I would love to get more of the team specific aspects built into the broadcast. And that could be anything. That could be, hey, game 1 and 2 of the Dodgers Mets series. The national broadcast is the Dodgers broadcast team. Then you go to Citi Field and you get Gary, Keith, and Ron, who do a great job on SNY for the Mets. And the same thing with the Yankees and the Guardians. This way, the whole nation gets to see how these teams have gotten here. Yeah, historical kind of perspective on each of the teams, and you learn stuff that way. A lot different than the way Bob Costas did it in that last series, but I'll leave that one alone again. But even, if it's during the pregame show, you get A-Rod, you get Jeter, you get Big Papi on set, bringing some guys from the teams that are playing in these series, other than obviously the Yankees and if the Red Sox are playing, and just give that little bit of local flavor. Let the fans in those markets know they're represented. Let the other fans learn a little bit more about these teams. So I'd say that's the biggest thing I'd change.
I like that idea actually. And then you give those men and women some exposure, right? Because the
Right.
only people that get to see them are, like you're saying, are their local affiliates right there. So yes, give them some exposure. We might love, since I've got an XM satellite radio. I don't know if you have XM
I
satellite
do.
radio.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you travel quite a bit, especially
Right.
especially now with everything that's going on in your life. But
Yeah.
uh, I love to listen to those broadcasters,
Right.
like John Miller. You don't get to hear John Miller anymore nationally, so I love to hear John Miller with the
Yeah.
San Francisco Giants. Right.
Right.
I actually like Oral Hershiser with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I like that broadcast really well. I can't remember the African American guy who broadcasts for Seattle. I know I've hit them up a couple times. I like that. And
Yeah.
then there's there's the one that I had to play for my wife the other day, the Kansas City. Right? Have you ever seen the Winnie the Pooh character where the what is it? I think it's the gopher, right? That almost whistles when he talks. If you ever listen to the Kansas City broadcaster, he kind of has that tone to him to where
Oh, that is
uh,
funny.
he he does. He almost whistles when he talks. It's
Yeah.
it's hilarious. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, I
still
totally
like it though.
agree. Yeah. And I think the radio side does it the right way because you're still getting the local broadcasters, even using the Mets as a case in point. Pete Alonso's big home run against the Brewers, having an iconic call by Howie Rose on the local radio broadcast that got picked up nationally. And it's one of those things that's going to live on in the history of the team because he's so passionate about the Mets. He grew up a Mets fan. He knows the team. He knows Pete. He knows how to announce those sorts of moments. And no Mets fan is going to forget him announcing Pete's fairy tale swing during a fairy tale season. So
Right.
that's stuff that just kind of sticks out. And if you have that on the TV side, just imagine that going nationally on a Fox or a TBS or any of those stations.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're seeing me being all distracted over here. I was really listening to what you were saying. I got all this music stuff going, and if I don't touch stuff, we don't have any of these fancy producers or anything. Everything gets done by me. So
Hey, you're
you
doing a
will.
great job.
Well, I don't know about that, but you'll see me in the background sometimes doing some stuff. Don't think I'm not paying attention to you. I certainly am. So
No,
I
all good.
like those. I like those ideas, Jason. Let's move on to our third topic here.
Yeah.
This is going to be the Phillies, right? So the president of baseball operations today, Dave Dombrowski. There's no R. It's Dombrowski.
Yeah.
He said that the staff and the entire coaching staff will return for the 2025 season. How do you feel about that? I mean, it's in your division, right? You cover the Mets for us. How do you feel about Dave Dombrowski coming out? I just can't say that to save my life. Dave
Yeah.
Dombrowski coming out and saying, "Hey, everybody's going to return,
Yeah.
even though we didn't." We'll get into it more. What do you think?
Hey, honestly, I think it's the right move. I really do.
Really?
I like the continuity factor. We mentioned before you spend 300 million and you don't make the playoffs. That's a huge, red flag, and you're going to see tons of changes.
Right.
He's had a really solid regular season. They obviously made the playoffs. They were, I think the top seed in the National League. So, hey, they did really well. They ran into a team that just beat them in a playoff series. Sometimes that happens. I don't blame the manager. I don't fault the manager. And I even remember last time I was on the show with you, we talked a little bit about, or actually, no, I think you and Mitch were on, but I typed in a comment. When you have a bye and you're not playing in that first round of the playoffs, you don't really want to change too much in terms of how you do things as a team, your kind of norms as you go through the season. And they probably had to do that because they had the bye. So that's always the challenge when you have those things and you're just kind of waiting around for the next round. So maybe that hurt them a little bit. They'll learn from it and they'll move forward. But I kind of like the continuity aspect for the Phillies, especially given their situation and their players, having one of the best starters in Zach Wheeler, having obviously Bryce Harper. But there are some areas I think that can improve, which we'll probably talk about. But I'm actually fine with them, leaving the coaching staff in place.
But they started off hot. I mean, again, I'm sure you do because this
Yep.
again this is your
Oh, yeah.
division, right? They started off like a house of fire,
Yeah.
but from the All-Star break to the end of the season, they were only 2 games over 500.
Yep.
Right. So I don't want to say they backed into the playoffs, but they had such a huge lead, and Atlanta had all the injuries and everything else.
Right.
But being where they were, that allowed a team like the Mets to still stay in it, right? It was one of those times where they let a team hang around, and it just
Yep.
so happened to be the Mets. And then the Mets beat them and burnt them. And
Yeah.
this is the second year in a row this has happened. The Diamondbacks did it to them last year. And
It's
you're
true.
saying, okay, well, you're saying, all right, well, I know that, they've been beaten in the first round the last 2 seasons, but I like the continuity. Really? You like the losing continuity?
Well, I think there's probably 25 to 30 other fan bases that would take the chance of, I know I'm going to reach the first or second round of the playoffs every year, and let me take my chances and try to push forward. So I don't really mind it, because the worst thing that could happen is you make a big change there, and next year you don't make the playoffs. It always goes back to, all right, well, who are you going to replace them with? Who's out there from a managerial prospect perspective that's going to come in and do any better than what this staff is doing?
Okay. So then you're going to tell me that the Phillies are all right spending $300 million and not even winning the playoff series. Yes?
As a Mets fan, oh yeah. But as a Phillies fan,
Well,
yeah.
okay. As a Mets fan, yes, of course, Mr. Biasy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as a Philly fan, you obviously got to look at it and say, all right, yeah, what is going to change? And I think there are some things that can change more roster wise than I think coaching staff wise.
Okay. So then if it's not the money, so the coaches aren't the ones to blame for their first round exit the last 2 years. That's what Dave Dombrowski, I did it right. That's what that's what Double D just said, right? He says, hey, all the coaching staff is going to stay the same. So then it's not the coaching staff. You're not going to blame the coaching staff at all?
No, I think they hold some of the responsibility. I just don't think it's most of it. At the end of the day, I kind of like that staff. They've brought a lot of, I'll call it, grounding to that team. Some of the personalities on that team are pretty tough to manage. It could be very volatile. It's an interesting market as well that they're dealing with, an interesting fan base. So I don't think they've done a bad job. To your point, they got to do better on finishing off seasons versus getting off to a really hot start. But yeah, I think they'll learn from it and be better next year. Unfortunately.
All right. So then if they're okay, all right. And again, they're in the same division as your Mets, so I get the trepidation here, right? So they're okay spending that kind of money. They've said the coaching staff is not to blame because they're bringing back everybody. They said, the bench coach, the hitting coach, the outfield coach, the base running coach, they're all coming back. They're not blaming any of them. So if they don't blame the fact that they still didn't spend enough money and they don't blame any of the coaches, that means that it lies with the players, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's kind of where my mind is. They're the guys on the field making things happen, day in and day out. Some of those players had a absolutely phenomenal year, and some of them just didn't really hold their weight.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at Taijuan Walker, who they're paying a ton of money to, that didn't give him a whole lot. But then you're going to look at, Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos. You're going to look at Alec Bohm at third, who had an up and down season.
Right.
So then, the final question that we'll look at here, as far as it comes to the Phillies. So then, who gets moved, and where are their holes? Talk to me about that. Again, this isn't your division, so where do you think their holes are, and who do you think they're going to get rid of?
Yeah, I think there's two places. One's the rotation beyond Wheeler and Nola. You mentioned Taijuan Walker. I know of him because he spent some time with the Mets too. Was a bit of a fan favorite as well. So it actually wasn't too great to see what happened to him this year. So I'd say filling the back end of the rotation, super important for them. And then look at the outfield. I mean, the outfield beyond Castellanos really didn't perform on. You could even argue Castellanos didn't play up to, his normal standards as well.
Right.
Playing home games in Citizens Bank Park, there's no reason not to have as many power hitters as you can. It's kind of a version of Yankee Stadium in the National League, if you will. It's a bandbox, and Bryce Harper takes advantage of it, but I think, need to look at the outfield as well and fill out the roster there.
And I've said this for the past 2 off seasons. I'm going to say it again this off season. The Phillies need to make one big move, and here it is. And it would work. And I think the team that has this particular player, this particular superstar, would give him up for what the Phillies have in their minor league systems right now. But they're going to have to give him Painter, and they're going to have to give him a couple of these pitchers that they've got coming up through. And they make a huge trade with the Anaheim Angels and bring the guy that's from New Jersey in and put him in center field, right?
Mhm.
You bring Mike Trout in
Right.
and you put him in center field. And I know you won't really want to see that as a Mets fan, but I think as a Phillies fan, I mean, shoot, you bring in Mike Trout, you put him in there with the other people that they already have in place, and I think you're going to have a really, really solid team. So I say it every year. Nobody ever listens to me. These baseball teams are just like my wife. Nobody never listens to me. So that's okay.
It happens.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's transition over into a little bit of Mets talk. All right, so we're going to look at Francisco Lindor. We're going to look at the manager. We're going to look at Jesse Winker, and we're going to talk about Pete Alonso, all of that stuff with my buddy Jason Crom here. And again, he is the guy who writes for www.welikesportspc.com, and he does so for not only the Mets, but he does so for the Jets. We'll get to his opinion on what happened with the Jets today here in just a little bit when we get into our NFL talk as well. So here's what I want you to do first for me, Jason. I'm going to give you the floor, and you give us a great take. Make a case for Francisco Lindor being the National League MVP. Go ahead.
Hey, to me, it's an easy one. Should be a slam dunk. Obviously, if Ohtani didn't enter the 50-50 club this year, I think it would be a slam dunk. But it comes down to the definition of most valuable player to me. You take Lindor off of the Mets this season, where are they? They're probably in last place. They just would not have been anywhere close to as successful as they were this season without him. And that's from a couple different aspects. So first, handling the bat. He got moved into the leadoff spot, throughout the season, and absolutely thrived there. He did it for the best of the team. He did phenomenally from the leadoff spot. He started off games with leadoff home runs, including the last one in Los Angeles in Game 2 of the NLCS, which really set the tone for the Mets to even the series. So that's just a little microcosm of what he's done this year with the bat. You look at the glove, he's always a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. Now, ironically, today, he did not make the finalist list for National League Gold Glove at shortstop, which is surprising to me, but it is what it is. I don't think he's going to lose any sleep over it, nor should he. But then you also look at just the durability. He missed a few games this season. It's the first time he did that as a Met. And then he came back, stronger and helped his team finish that magical run into the playoffs. And so far, so good through the playoffs. So on the field, super clutch for the Mets and by far their most valuable player. And then you look at the leadership on top of it. You watch the guy get interviewed. You just watch him carry himself. He hit one of the biggest home runs in Mets history almost, and the guy's just chugging around the bases like I've been here before. That's the kind of thing you love to see when you're teaching kids how to play the game. When you want to see the game played the right way, you look at Francisco Lindor. He started a huge momentum shift with the Mets this year just by calling a team meeting. They were floundering, just got crushed by the Dodgers, and he got the team together. Players afterwards, including veterans like JD Martinez, said, yeah, that turned us around. What he did was amazing and just brought the team together. So those things, whether it's on the field, off the field, how he carries himself and how he carries a bat and glove, to me, he should be a shoe-in for the MVP. Now, again, will he get it? I don't know. It's hard to overcome a 50-50 season by Ohtani, but you pull Ohtani off the Dodgers, you're still looking at Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Hernandez. They've still got a pretty quality lineup that would make the playoffs with or without him. So that's my case for Francisco Lindor for MVP.
Okay, I'm going to hit on a couple of things. I was a little upset that you hit on the one thing, but I'm gonna give you your props here for getting everything that I would have gotten and a few more things. Um, I agree with you. I am not a big Shohei Ohtani fan. For those people who have been watching this show for the longest time, I don't like all the attention he's getting. I think they swept the whole gambling thing under the rug so that they knew he was their we'll go with the cash cow, right? And, so
Mhm.
MLB didn't really mess with that a whole lot. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that he only plays half. You said it earlier. Lindor plays
Right.
both sides of the ball.
Yep.
I had the same problem with Edgar Martinez back in the day, right? Edgar Martinez, a great hitter, but only DH, only had to play half the time and could sit on the bench. It's not near as much of a struggle if you've only got to play half,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And I respect Lindor for doing that. The second thing, and for me, the biggest thing, and Mitch is much younger than I am. Jason, you're younger than I am. I'm the old guy. I'm the get off my lawn guy, as Mitch likes to call me all the time, right? I love it, and you mentioned it. I love it when a player hits his home run, knows he's carrying the team on his back, and he just drops the bat and begins to walk to first base, right? I
Yep.
can't stand these guys who think they have to flip it and they gotta, I don't even like Alonso and his,
Yeah.
just walk around the bases and let's be done,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You don't have to
Act like
do
you've
all
done
that
it before.
stuff. Right, act like you've been there before, right?
Yeah.
It is a football saying more
Yeah.
than it is a baseball saying, but it's 100% true. Uh, and those are the two things that I really like about Lindor. Um, he's one of those guys, to be honest with you, I would love to sit down and have a beverage with, uh, and
Yeah.
talk to him about the game of baseball. Just have a 30-minute conversation with him. I don't know
Yeah.
how you feel about that, but he's one of those guys on my list
Oh,
that I
yeah.
would love to be able to do that with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just one of the good guys at the game, and yeah, I even wrote about it earlier this season. One controversial thing he said when the Mets were playing the Guardians, and Cleveland media asked him, "Well, what do you miss the most about playing here?" He said, "The winning." And my big push on him, and I wrote about it was,
Mhm.
"Well, you're the highest paid player on the team. Do something about it." You know what he did? He did something about it. He went
Right.
out and he walked the walk, and the Mets are in the NLCS now. So good for him.
But I don't have a problem with him saying, "Hey, I miss winning."
Yeah.
I have the problem, and I was at a family function over the weekend. And we were talking about, he is a school teacher and he teaches middle school kids.
Mhm.
And it's like, he was asking me some stuff, and I'm like, hey, you hold these kids accountable, man. This is when they
Yeah.
learn, right?
Right.
I know all the parents are like, oh, we need to have fun and we want to. No, no, you do not.
Right.
This is where we're starting to figure out, can your son or can your daughter actually
Mhm.
play this game and be successful at it?
Right.
There is not a team who has ever jumped up and down at the end of the game and be like, we finished second, right? No,
Right.
it's
Yep.
always we win, and I think we need to value winning more, not only in youth sports but in major league sports as well. So
Mhm.
I didn't have a problem with him saying it,
Yep. Good.
not one bit. Let's look at manager of the year. So is there another manager who should be considered for National League Manager of the Year other than Mets manager Carlos Mendoza?
I don't think so, and I don't even think it's close. I mean, this guy has come in and just, yeah, pushed all the right buttons, with a couple of exceptions here or there and in-game type of stuff, but that happens with any manager. But you figure his first managing gig, he was a really good hire from the perspective of knowing the New York market, and maybe even knowing a little bit more of the heat of the New York market, because he was the bench coach of the Yankees. So, seeing that high standard, I think, was really helpful for this team. Yeah, it probably sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit between the Phillies and the Mets, but the change that the Mets made, getting rid of Buck Showalter and bringing Mendoza in, completely different personality. Now they also held on to some of their coaches like Hefner, who's a great pitching coach. But Mendy, which is what they all call him on the team, he brought that calming influence. He wanted the guys to have fun. And there's one story that I keep going back to that Lindor has said. When he was injured, he was pressing, he was stressed. Mendoza noticed it, pulled him aside, and just said, "Look, have fun and smile." he's like, that meant a lot to me. Powered him through. And now Lindor's doing what he's doing. And there's been a couple of those sorts of instances. I think Alvarez has talked about it a little bit. JD Martinez, like his ability to connect with players is just phenomenal. He's got a good strategy about him. To work for David Stearns, you got to understand the analytics, which I know, comes a little bit from the Yankee side too. So I think he was the right hire at the right time, and he's done just an absolutely phenomenal job with the Mets. And going back to 0-5 to OMG, starting the season the way they did, it could have been very easy for that to spiral, but he didn't let it happen, and he got the guys motivated and got them back on track.
I would throw Mike Shilton in there a little bit. I like what he did with the Padres this year.
Yeah.
I would also throw Snicker in there because he had to deal with a ton of injuries on that Brave staff and still kept them not only above water, but they did make the playoffs. They got eliminated pretty much right away, but they at least they made the playoffs with all those injuries that they had. And the one thing that I will say against Carlos Mendoza is how hard is it to manage a $300 million payroll?
Very. To be honest with you, you talk about those personalities in that room, and the pressure cooker that is New York with the New York media. To me that's almost a little bit more pressure, because with it you don't have that excuse of, well, we're not spending the money. You go down the hall to Steve Cohen's office, you say, I need $10 million because we really need this player. He'll like, fine, go do it, make it happen, but you're accountable for it. And he's shown himself to be somebody that's holding everybody accountable. So to me, it's honestly a little bit more pressure to be able to succeed in your first managing gig in a new clubhouse, but setting that tone with the expectations that come with a $300 million payroll. To me, it's another feather in the cap for Mendoza. But I know it's probably not a popular opinion outside of New York, but that's at least how I see it.
Okay. I mean, I'll let you have your unpopular opinion, sir. That's fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The manager's doing great. Francisco Lindor is a great leader. Tell me the three things that the Mets have to do in order to make it to the World Series.
Yeah, so for me, it's managing the Dodgers' runs and keeping them to a minimum. So you got to pick your poison with that lineup. When you start a lineup with Shohei Ohtani, you go to Betts, you go to Hernandez, and then you go to Freeman. You can't pitch around all of them. You're going to have to pick who you pitch to on certain days or certain occasions. So it comes back to the scouting and things like that. And, Alvarez, to his credit, young catcher, but he's managed the pitching staff phenomenally all season long. And he's continued to do that through the playoffs. So I'd say that's key number one, is just know the Dodgers are going to score some runs, but, keep those those long innings to a minimum, if you will. Yeah, I'd say the second is the bullpen for the Mets. They've got to be that bridge from starting pitchers to Edwin Diaz. Diaz has been a little non-Diaz this season in terms of losing control of his pitches pretty quickly, and it's been a little bit up and down. He's kind of going into more of the mold of the Armando Benitez years for the Mets, but it keeps it exciting, if nothing else. But the rest of the bullpen really needs to hold up their end of the bargain. And they've done that for the most part. Guys like Reed Garrett, Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek. They've all done a nice job. And even sliding David Peterson into the long relief role has been great. And he's done a phenomenal job as a lefty coming out of that pen and spelling, specifically Kodai Senga through his first couple of starts here in the playoffs. So the bullpen coming through is going to be huge. And the third is being patient at the plate. So they've got to extend at bats. They've got to get to the Dodgers bullpen and have the Dodgers burn their bullpen. They used a lot of pitchers in game 2. Game 1, they didn't. Mets didn't achieve that at all, and they got crushed 9-0. The Dodgers starter went 7 innings and gave up like 2 hits. So they can't do that. They've got to be patient. They've got to extend at bats and really work that bullpen, because it's a 7-game series. And it's going to come down to bullpens and longevity there.
Absolutely. And the Dodgers are hurt as far as pitching goes. So
right. Exactly. Yep.
It just kind of adds to everything.
Yep.
I like those. I like those a lot. So let me ask this. We used to have him. We act like there's a mouse in my pocket here or something, but He used to be with the Cincinnati Reds. I'm a big Reds guy, right? So we're going to
Yep.
talk about Jesse Winker for a second, right? So does every team need a Jesse Winker? And what I mean by that is, Jesse's the agitator. Uh,
Mhm.
Jesse seems to be, whether it was with the Reds and I believe it was the Mets fans, right? When he was
Yep.
with the Reds, he threw the baseball up into the
Right.
stands and he did all of that. And he's like, read the baseball, read the
Right.
baseball. Just his antics that he likes to do. During the Milwaukee series, he told what was it? I believe their shortstop, "Hey, I'll meet you in the parking lot," and all
Right.
this, and got a lot
Yep.
of publicity and everything.
Uh-huh.
Does that distract from a team, or does that add to the team? And personally, Jason, do you like somebody like that on your team or not?
So Winker, I'd say he's one of those guys you absolutely love him when he's on your team, and you hate him when he's not on your team. So
Okay,
it gets to that agitator thing, but he's great for this Mets team. And there's a couple reasons. One is the history, and you hit the nail on the head. Interacting with Mets fans that were like making very derogatory signs about him, he loved it. And
right.
I think the ball said something like, "Hey, I love the sign. It's great to have fans back in the stands," because it was right after COVID.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he knows about the Mets, and he knows about Mets fans, and he loves being part of the organization. So I think a player like him can be super helpful for the team in one condition: when you have strong leadership to kind of keep him within the guardrails. Otherwise, it goes crazy, and then he is going to start fighting other players. But when you've got a Lindor, kind of guiding the ship, if you will, you've got a Mendoza who knows how to interact with players. I think it's great because he's going to keep folks accountable. He's going to keep folks, very engaged, I'll call it, with the game and with what's going on. So for a team like the Mets and where they are now, I think he's perfect. He's not perfect for every team, but I think he's exactly what they need at this point in time.
So, do you think he's a long-term fit for the Mets or not?
I think he should be. And his role is going to change as you go through the years, and he's going to be taking on less and less of a role as some of the prospects come up and start filling the shoes that they're expected to fill. But from a cultural standpoint, like I said, he's fitted very, very well. I think he wants to be with the team, which is a huge piece as well. And his teammates seem to really, really like him. So I'd like to see him stay long term. I'm going to guess he wants to stay long term too. And it's just a matter of making it all work with dollars and cents and with playing time.
Okay, so we're talking about long-term, short-term Mets. I got to put the question up here. People will
Yeah.
see it before I ask it. Will Pete Alonso be a Met next season? Jason, what's your opinion here, buddy?
So as of today, I'm going to say yes. If you would have asked me this question 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would have said no. So the thing about Pete is, he had by his standards, a subpar season. He bet on himself, similar to what
Yeah.
Aaron Judge did, and Aaron set records, and he made himself a $40 million per year contract. Pete did not do that. Pete put up decent power numbers this year. He's never really one to hit for great average, but they weren't noisy home runs. And what I mean by that is they weren't at clutch times throughout the regular season. Hey, we're losing 7-1. Oh, Pete just hit a solo homer at 7-2. Great. Still a home run. But that all changed one night in Milwaukee. And it goes back to that Howie Rose call that I made or that I talked about that he made, where it was about Pete's fairy tale swing in the Mets fairy tale season. That right there put him into the history books for the New York Mets. And I think based on that, Steve Cohen's going to want to pay him. And he's going to want to keep him with the Mets and make him the Mets all-time home run leader, over the next probably year or two. So he's not far off, but I think that swing by himself really put him into the running to be with the Mets long-term. So if I'm going to handicap it right now, I'm going to say he's going to be back. Would I be shocked if he wasn't? No. I mean, he's got Scott Boras as an agent, so he's going to go where the money is. And that could just be somebody. It could be somebody like Philadelphia or Atlanta that wants to steal a division rival. Now, granted, they have great first basemen, but you get my point. All it takes is one owner that says, I want this guy. I want this guy in the home run derby wearing my uniform every year, and that can make it happen. Heck, it could be in the Bronx. You never know. They've got a little bit of an issue at first base. So there's a lot of different options, I think, for Pete. But again, if I'm going to say yes or no right now, it's a yes for me.
So you really think one swing? I mean, how many swings? I mean, he's had thousands of swings this year, right? And you're
Yep.
going to tell me that one swing could make him, I'm going to throw a number out here, 8 years, $300 million guy.
I think so. To be perfectly honest with you, I know it's crazy, but that swing, getting them through the Milwaukee series and winning that series for them showed he can be clutch. Was he lucky? Yeah, probably. But it showed he came through in a clutch situation. That's what the Mets need. He's a homegrown talent. So it gets around the whole thing of, well, Steve's just going to go out and buy players. No, he got drafted out of the University of Florida by the New York Mets and developed and came up through their farm system. So I think there's something to that as well. But there is going to be a limit for Cohen too, where he just says, no, I can't do it past X dollar amount. Maybe it is 8 years and 300. I kind of had him pegged at a 25 million a year type of guy. So maybe beyond that, it's like, best of luck, Pete. It's been great, but not in the cards.
Yeah, but Jordan Montgomery got 25 million or so a year this year, and you're going to tell me that Pete Alonso is going to go, oh yeah, I'm just like Jordan Montgomery.
Well, let's not get into Jordan Montgomery. That didn't work out very well, did it?
No, that's my point here.
Yeah, and he also took it on a 1-year deal, if I remember, with a second-year option or something, because nobody would sign him, and he was holding out for that much money. So, yeah, I don't know that Pete's going to make that much more, but we'll see. Market could be crazy.
If you were Steve Cohen, would you do? I'm going to use the same number. I'm going to say 8 and 300, right? So you are the owner of the Mets. Are you giving Pete Alonso 8 years, $300 million for a 230 batting average and somewhere between 25 and 35 home runs a season?
No, that's way past my limit. I think my limit's about 25 mil a year. In my heart of hearts, I can't see him being worth more than Lindor is, and Lindor is right around 30 million based on it, or 34, I should say, based on his contract he signed years ago. So with inflation, it'd probably be worth more if he signed it today. But I can't say with a straight face that I think Pete Alonso's stats are worth more than 25 million. And look, 3 weeks ago, I probably would have said 20. So again, that one swing in Milwaukee is worth something, and it put him in the history books and the tales that will be told of Mets history. And I think that is worth something, but there's always a limit. And like you said, 230 hitter, 30 home runs, and represent you in the home run derby every season. There's a limit to what you pay for that.
Right. Okay. Now, interesting discussion. I'm going to tell you no. I don't think he'll be a Met because I think that him and Scott Boras, who I think is the devil of Major League Baseball,
Agree.
I think that he is going to really try to drive up the price, and it's only going to take one team. We said that earlier. It's only going to take one team.
Yep.
Will it be? Let's talk about it for a second. Will it be like Oakland? Right? Will Oakland come in and say, okay, I'm going to sign him long term. He's going to be our first baseman. He's going to be the guy who, like you just said, represents us in the home run derby every year. He is going to be the face of our franchise. And that's what I think. Pete Alonso can be the face of your franchise, but you're going to have to pay for it. So,
right. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see who decides.
Yep.
Yeah. Who decides that, yes, we are going to pay him.
Or how about this one? I'd be happy to let Pete go if the Mets sign Juan Soto instead. If you allocate those dollars to Soto, then yeah, I think Alonso ends up somewhere else. But that's a lot of hypotheticals.
Right? There are so many, and that's what we love to do here. That's what you and I both love to do. We love to write about it, love to talk about it, and see what really comes to fruition. I got to give some props to the Arizona Fall League. Over the weekend, I took my nephew to the Arizona Fall League. You may have seen pictures up on our Twitter account and up on the Facebook account. The kid got 9 signatures.
Wow.
Fantastic. And these guys are hit or miss guys, but I will tell you that statistically, like 72, I believe 72% of the people that are in the Arizona make it to the big leagues.
Yeah.
And then, there we are. And then Goodyear is also going to do a triple header on Saturday. It's a $20 ticket. So if you're in this area, if you're in the Arizona area and you really want to see a great product and you want to get some good autographs, you want to bring your kids and get all that taken care of, the Arizona Fall League is for you. Let's transition, big man. Let's transition to 4 down territory. Maybe.
Oh, there you go.
All right, there we go. Maybe not.
Yep, there it was.
I don't know what happened. All right.
Oop, I'm losing you, Mike.
I don't think my there we go. Jason, you back with me, buddy?
Yep, I got you.
He is stuck. He is frozen. Come on, Jason, let it go. Don't be frozen.
I can hear you. Looks like you're frozen to me.
Keeps going out. I do not know. I tell you what, let me close a couple of these windows. Tell me, Jason, can you hear me now?
Yep, I've got you now.
Jason?
Yep.
Okay, buddy. Give us a score update.
Yeah, so 4-2 Yankees in the top of the 7th with 2 outs.
All right, 4-2 Yankees. I'm sure most people are trying to watch it in the background and everything. All right, let's get into our 4 down territory here. We would usually have music. I don't know what's going on today. The internet's being crazy. So, and we're going to put it up here on the screen.
Oop, I lost you again, Mike.
That's all right. I'm here. I'm too ugly to be gone for too long.
There you are.
So the first thing we're going to look at as far as the NFL goes is what kind of impression will Tom Brady have on the Raiders? So if you haven't heard today, Tom Brady did get the minority. They bought 10%. Jason, what do you think is going to happen culturally now with the Raiders now that Tom Brady is involved?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think it changes very much unless he's able to put on a helmet and a jersey and get under center and play some quarterback. Beyond that,
Nope, not now.
Yeah, exactly. So as a single digit percent owner, I don't know how much he's really going to have in terms of an impact. And if he does, I mean, honestly, it's a little confusing to me. The guy's an announcer in the NFL, has access to all these different players. And I know the NFL tried to put some guardrails up and said, you're not allowed in production meetings. those sorts of things. But then that harms him as an announcer. And if I'm Fox, I'm going to say I got a problem with that. So this whole dynamic and setup is a little strange to me. I know why Tom would want to do it, just like I think Richard Seymour as well was in on the deal. But from the perspective of the Raiders and their fans and football fans in general, to me, it's just very confusing, and I honestly don't expect much of a change. If there is a change, it's probably a long way down the road.
All right. So do you think Tom will force the Raiders to be a winner now that he's involved?
I think he might try, but given the Raider tradition that's been built here over the past few years, it's going to be a little bit of a long haul before you do see too much of a cultural change. I mean, again, they just brought in new head coach, Antonio Pierce, who is the interim coach and then got the full-time job. We'll talk about the trade they made today. They made a pretty big and impactful trade. So yeah, I don't know. I'm having a tough time with this one. It's a weird fit for me for Tom Brady. And like I said, as a 5% owner, I don't know how much impact he's really going to be able to have anyway.
But everybody is going to know that he owns part of the Raiders, and I think that just brings the winning up, right? Because he has never not won at anything. So now you're like, okay, Tom Brady is a broadcaster. Is he good or is he not good? Tom Brady was a player. Was he good? Was he not good? Well, now Tom Brady is an owner, and he's going to want to be good. He's going to want that team that he's associated with to be good. So do you think he's going to overhaul the entire roster?
No, I don't think so. And I'd also point to one Michael Jordan who tried to do a very similar thing in Charlotte with the basketball team, and that didn't go very well at all. Derek Jeter as well. There's been a couple of instances here of former players, champions that have tried to do a similar thing, and it hasn't worked out. It's very different on the owner side of the table. And I think these guys learn that pretty quickly. So Tom may try to change some stuff, make it into more of a winning culture. But I think he's in for very, very tough sledding here for the foreseeable future in that regard. Got you speechless?
All right. So he's in.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay. All right. Last question. Yes. Well, I'm trying to figure out am I there? Am I not there? So I don't know what's going on with this internet today, but it's starting to really tick me off here. So
All good.
I'm making a phone call to my internet provider here as soon as we're done.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
last question here is as it relates to Tom Brady. This is interesting, I think, and I put it on our notes. I'm going to be really interested to hear what you would have to say. Will he fire Antonio Pierce to bring in Bill Belichick?
To me, no way, no how. I think there's enough bridge burning done between those guys that I don't see that happening. Now, again, stranger things have happened, but yeah, I think there was enough of the banter of who drove the winning in New England, Brady or Belichick. Brady then went on to win a Super Bowl title in Tampa. Belichick didn't do very well without Brady there, but I think if Belichick goes back into the coaching field, it's going to be away from Tom. So if for no other reason he could prove to himself and to the rest of the world, I don't need Brady. I can win on my own, and I am a Hall of Fame coach, and I'm going to go ahead and prove that. So Brady may want to investigate it. I just don't see Belichick, going down that path.
Okay, I think it'll be interesting, but I mean, they won together. That's how Brady sells it to Bill, right? Hey, man, we've won together before. We can win together again. Don't you want another ring? All this kind of stuff, right? So it'll be an interesting dynamic between the two. So the Bills, we'll start with the Bills, right? They made a trade today, so they traded for Amari Cooper. So before we go into what they got and what they gave up, let's do this. What does the Amari Cooper trade mean for them in the 2024 season?
Yeah, so to me, it just shows that they're all in. They know they're in a pretty weak division. They also have a division rival that made a pretty big deal. So maybe some of this is keeping up with the Johnsons, if you will, with the Jets ownership. But
Right.
to me, they're all in. They're seeing the opportunity here of running away with this division. Miami's dealing with their stuff. I don't see them winning the division. The Jets may hit their stride here, but before they do, Buffalo probably wants to put a nice buffer in between them. So they're seeing a lot of opportunity and they're going for it. And I kind of like the deal from their perspective. They don't have that rich of a wide receiver core. Since Diggs left, they've been searching for that pure number one. And I think they finally got him.
Okay. So I'll give you the specifics of the trade here. So Buffalo got Amari Cooper and a 2025 sixth rounder, and the Browns get a 2025 third rounder and a 2026 seventh rounder. Do you think the trade was even for both teams?
Kind of. So for me, this is also, Buffalo going all in. On the flip side, this is Cleveland completely punting on the season. So, you take your top wide receiver, you trade them for, what they're getting. So a pick and a pick swap for lack of a better term.
Right.
Doesn't feel great. If you're sitting there in Cleveland, you're like, well, who's Deshaun Watson going to throw to? But that's just the problem. He hasn't been thrown to anybody.
Does it? I was going to say, I don't think it matters.
Yeah. I mean, it's just been a complete train wreck there. So to the extent they could try to build up a little bit more draft capital after everything they gave up for Watson, I think they need to do that. So they're in a bit of a pickle here as they look into 2025 and beyond and all the guaranteed money to Watson. So from that perspective, that's what tilts me a little bit more towards, it might have been fair because they're able to, build up a tiny bit more draft capital. I think if I remember Cooper's contract, it's over after this year. I don't see any way he was going to re-sign in Cleveland. So versus losing him for nothing, at least you get something back here. So from that perspective, I think Cleveland kind of did whatever they could to recoup some capital by not losing him for nothing.
All right, so Buffalo's top receiver right now is Khalil Shakur. I think it's how you say his name. I don't know. Why can't people just have names like Smith?
Yeah, exactly.
And he has 249 yards, 2 touchdowns. And you're like, oh, well, that's terrible, right? Six weeks in, he's got 249 yards and 2 touchdowns? Well, no wonder they traded for Amari Cooper, right? But Amari Cooper has 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. So did they really upgrade a whole lot? Or are they just kind of, shooting themselves in the foot?
Well, it sounds like it. But now I think they really are upgrading. And I'll give you one big difference. And we've talked about it. You got Deshaun Watson or Josh Allen. And I think, working with Josh Allen, it'll be very, very different for Cooper, going up to Buffalo. I think he'll thrive in that offense with Brady as the OC and, Allen is the quarterback. I think they're in very good shape moving forward this season. I think he'll do very, very well.
All right. So, for those of you who are with us, we got double-digit people following us live. We certainly appreciate that. You guys can comment. Just click on the comment thing above. And then if you see part of the show and you want to see the rest of the show and you're like, wow, these guys aren't half bad. Well, you can go to our YouTube page as well, right? We are now on YouTube. You can go back and watch it whenever. Just look up the Sportz, SPORTZ Truth. Or you can also look it up by doing the 643&Out guys. And before you ask the crazy question, how in the world did they get that 643&Out guy title? Well, we do baseball and football on this show mainly. So if you do 643, it's a double play in baseball, and 3&Out is the fact that you can't make a first down in football. So we took those two terms, we smashed them together, and we came up with these 643&Out guys. All right, so we talked about Buffalo and their receivers. One more thing here on Amari Cooper and the trade that was made today between Buffalo and Cleveland. He's been traded 3 times. He started off with the Raiders, and he went to the Cowboys, and then he went to the Browns. Now he's going to the Bills. Is there something wrong with him? He's been traded 3 times.
I personally don't think so. I mean, if you look at the teams he's been with, I mean, they're not really known as the most stable. I mean, if he got traded from the Steelers and the Giants and organizations like that, I'd feel a little different. But yeah, it's those three teams, it doesn't worry me as much. And it could also tell you he's also in very high demand. So a lot of other teams actually do want him, and that's why they're trading for him and not waiting for him to hit the free agent market and trying to sign him to a deal that way. So if I'm a Buffalo fan, I wouldn't be concerned from that perspective.
Okay. So let's jump into the other trade that happened today, the other big receiver trade that happened. The Jets traded for Deontay Adams. So same question we started off with on the last one. Jason, what does the trade for Mr. Adams say about the Jets' 2024 season?
Yeah, I think it says two things. And one of them might be a little controversial, but not overly surprising. So the first one, non-controversial, they're also all in. They kind of have to be. Woody Johnson, when he fired Coach Robert Saleh last week, said, "This is the best roster that's been constructed in my 25 years as Jets owner." So he's fully bought in that this team should be winning. Now, why you put an interim first-time coach in charge of it, I don't know, but that's probably a conversation for another day. And we wrote about that, on WeLikeSportsPC.com as well after Coach Saleh was released. But one thing is, all right, Woody Johnson's fully bought in. He wants to go for the title this year when Aaron Rodgers is so far healthy. The second thing, a little more controversial, is I really believe Aaron Rodgers is running all aspects of this team. And whether that be play calling, whether that be who's coaching, and third, what players are there? You even go back, who'd they bring in last year? Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb as wide receivers. Both played with Aaron in Green Bay. This year, they're bringing in Devontae Adams. Same thing. Feels like Aaron's just trying to reignite, what worked for him in Green Bay. And it hasn't worked in New York so far. And I hope I'm wrong on this, but I don't really see much changing now either. Devontae is going to take a little bit of time to get used to the Jets and vice versa. Obviously, he'll know Aaron from their time in Green Bay, but just the new system and those sorts of things, it'll take him a little while to get up the learning curve and make some contributions. But we'll see. He may see some time against Pittsburgh on Monday, and that'll be fascinating.
Right. So same basic second question here. I'll go over the exacts of the trade. So they traded Devontae Adams to the Jets. The Jets give them a conditional third-round pick that can become a second-round pick if the following happens, which is Devontae is a first or second-team All-Pro. It's a little weird contract stipulation-wise.
Yeah.
And I think they're banking on the fact, the Raiders are banking on the fact that he's going to do well in New York and that he will be either a first or second team All-Pro. And that's really not hard to do anymore, especially with some of the receivers and things that are out there now. So I'm still going to ask you the same question that I asked you the last time. Is this a fair trade for each side?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would see it as not fair for the Jets. That's a pretty high draft pick. But at the same token, if they really get an all NFL receiver out of this deal and he's able to produce like he did in Green Bay and they rekindle that magic that they had on the field, it's going to be fine to give up a second round pick for that. You take it every day of the week because that probably means they're progressing pretty far into the playoffs. But you got to remember, I mean, the defense for the Jets is a conference championship, dare I say, Super Bowl level defense. They just need an offense to match it now. They've got the quarterback, theoretically. They've got the offensive line, theoretically, based on who they signed this offseason. Mm-hmm. So where do you fill in those gaps? Was this the deal I would have made and focused on wide receiver? Probably not. But it is what it is. I mean, Woody Johnson's been very clear he wants to win this year, and he's showing it.
Okay. I agree with you a lot, and we're going to talk about this for a little bit now because I want to dive into this with you. I think it's going to be interesting because I really think we're going to disagree here. So this might be a spirited debate here for the next few moments.
Good. Let's do it.
In his post-game press conference, Rodgers called out pretty much everybody but himself. I don't like that. you're going to tell me that you had zero to do with the loss. That if you go back and look at some of the plays, you can look at receivers that were open, and you can say he made the wrong choice. He even went on, he being Rogers being he even said, hey, this guy was supposed to turn this way, and the play called for this, and he went and did that. And he's like, oh, I'm just throwing to where he's supposed to be. He even had the one play where he didn't even look. He did the no look pass, and it's okay. So let's say that Rogers and Adams get on the same page. Is everybody else going to be pissed at him and be like, well, no, I turned the wrong way? And, that would kind of be my reaction if I was Luzardo, right? He calls me out. I'm going to be like, no, man, throw to Devontae every play. Go ahead, buddy. I'm just going to hang out over here on the side. I'm still getting paid, so whatever. How do you think this dynamic is now going to work with Aaron Rodgers and the rest of his teammates?
I honestly hate it. I don't disagree with you. I think it was wrong. I think the Jets have created a monster here. Yeah, Jets have created a monster. They've given him everything he's wanted, whether it be coaching staff, personnel, whatever. Like, he's just gotten it all. And this is what you get. Then with the New York media, I mean, the thing's going to blow up, which is what you're now seeing. I go back to that, picture and video that you see of Rodgers shoving Saleh on the way off the field in that one game. And they both tried to play it off, as they should, but you shouldn't be doing that to a coach ever, at least in my book. So I think it's going to be a problem. Ultimately it's time for Aaron to put up or shut up. And he has not performed to his top level talent. He's done well. He's certainly an upgrade over what they had last year with Zach Wilson. But with the contract he's pulling in, with his Hall of Fame credentials, he can and should be doing more. Even this Nathaniel Hackett thing, who's now no longer the play caller. He was there because of Aaron Rodgers, and that they were very tight. So you see a lot of this stuff, and him calling out receivers. I mean, they're receivers before Devontae Adams got there. Garrett Wilson. Name me a team who wouldn't want Garrett Wilson on their roster. Mike Williams, a veteran who's also been there and done that many times and is very, very highly respected. Then you've got Lazard, who is Aaron Rodgers' handpicked receiver to bring in. So a lot of these things, I think it's a head scratcher on why they even brought in Devontae Adams. I know why they did. It's a splash. Woody Johnson wants to bring in the biggest stars. I get it. But I don't see it having the impact of what Woody Johnson probably thinks it's going to.
Right, that would like me, right? So I had invited you on the show a couple of days ago because I had promised you earlier, kind of behind the scenes kind of stuff that people don't really know about here. But I had promised you that if your Mets got to the playoffs, we would have you on the show, right? Well, then this came about. I asked you yesterday, you agreed to it, and then Mitch got under the weather, and it all kind of not that I'm throwing Mitch under the bus or anything. Mitch is my guy. We've been doing this for a long time. But it did kind of work out nice for you to come on the show today and be able to do this with me.
Yeah.
It would be like me being Aaron Rodgers and inviting you on the show and then telling you how terrible you are and how you're a bad writer and how, I don't even know why you're on this show with me and everything. Right. That is essentially what Aaron Rodgers has done, right? He went and he picked Luzardo to come over. And then in his press conference, he said he's a piece of trash.
Yeah.
I don't understand that logic whatsoever. And to be honest with you, I don't understand Aaron Rodgers half the time. He does things and he says things. Let me ask you this, Jason. Would you agree with this statement that I'm about to make here? Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers is not as good as he thinks he is.
Oh, 100% agree. Yeah, no, I'm with you. He was at one point. I don't think he is anymore, though.
So how about Aaron Rodgers is not as good as the Jets think he is?
Depends who on the Jets. So I think Woody Johnson, yes, he's not as good as Woody Johnson thinks he is. Probably not as good as Nathaniel Hackett thinks he is. But I'm willing to bet, given the veterans that are on that roster, that there's probably some head scratching again on, all right, what's going on here? You've got a guy like Tyron Smith that you brought in, all pro, probably Hall of Famer left tackle. Now, granted, he didn't play very well in the last game against Buffalo, but again, you got to start wondering why. Why is that happening? The guys on the defensive side of the ball, Sauce Gardner, they're holding Denver to 10 points and the offense puts up 9. Like it's not acceptable for a quarterback of the stature that you have with Aaron Rodgers.
So you've got all of this frustration in New York, and you seem to have another good receiver in Buffalo. So I've got to ask you the final question here as we wrap up these 2 trade talks for a moment here with our NFL 4-down territory. Who do you think is going to win the division? Buffalo,
Yes.
Jets, somebody else?
No, I think it's Buffalo. I really do. I think Buffalo runs away with it. They'll probably end up with 11 to 12 wins. The Jets, yeah, I see them probably finishing fairly strong, maybe in the 8 to 9 win range based on what you're seeing today. And then Miami maybe ends up somewhere similar in there.
All right, so I want to ask you 2 questions here as we're going to wrap up our NFL 4-down territory. We usually do 4 questions. Today we're going to do 5 actually. With these last 2, we try to do it in different territories. But let's do this. It looks like Pittsburgh is going to start Russell Wilson week 7 against these Jets. Would you do that, or would you stick with Justin Fields?
I'm a no on this one, to be honest with you, Mike. I know Russell Wilson's got a nice resume, but Justin Fields has been doing a nice job for the Steelers. And I know Tomlin has said, yeah, the offense has been good. I want it to be great. Well, we all want that. But I don't know that
Right.
change to Russell Wilson is going to do that. Fields has been successful running the ball, throwing the ball, and they're in first place. So the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't break it. So
Right.
not even don't fix it, just don't break it. So
Don't break it.
I think he's tempting fate here a little bit. And I would have stuck with Justin Fields.
Okay, and I'm in the same boat with you. I would put Justin Fields in some bubble wrap and put him out there right now.
Yep.
If he gets hurt, if he has a terrible game, and I think that Steelers fans and the Steelers coaching staff is just seemingly waiting for Justin Fields to fall apart so they can put Russell Wilson in there. But until that happens, I'm with you. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Right.
Yep.
Second one here, and this will be our last question for the NFL, and then we will jump into college football. There'll be no music in between because I don't want us to lose our internet connection again, right? So Adrian Hutchinson is out for the season. I wish Mitch was here. Mitch is a big Detroit guy. I'd love to get his opinion on this, and I'm sure we will here in the coming weeks. But he's out for the season. So without him, I'm not sure if the Lions can make the playoffs, and the critics are seemingly giving up on the season. If you are the Detroit Lions, if you are their coaching staff, if you are their ownership, are you going to use this trade deadline to trade away some of your players and try to load up and give up on the season? Or are you going to trudge forward with what you got and see what happens?
Yeah, honestly, for me, I'm trudging forward and seeing what we've got. And there's one guy that's the reason for that, and that's Dan Campbell. I mean, the culture he's installed up there in Detroit is it's amazing. Just the turnaround he's had with a franchise that hadn't been good for so long. Now they are, I almost put them at the top of the class. So I would not punt on the season if I were them, because you never know what next season's going to look like. And they're, were they 4-1? It's not like they're in a bad spot to start with. So they're very much in the wild card race. And if Minnesota wasn't undefeated, they'd probably be running away with the division too. So
and that's going to be my follow up to you is what about Minnesota? Minnesota is ahead of them, and now they're, I don't know, they were a little ahead of them. Now they're like head and shoulders above them now, right?
Yeah, but I really do believe in that culture, and I would obviously love to hear Mitch's point on this too, but because he watched them a lot closer than I do. But from afar, it's like they are a pretty well-oiled machine with Campbell at the helm there, and just that attitude and that culture. It's going to be very much next man up, and somebody's got to step up, take Hutchinson's productivity, and just go with it. And the offense is going to have to step up too to offset some of that. So I think they'll be ready. I still think they're there, and they're going to make some noise in the NFC this year.
And I think this will be an interesting last question for this topic before we jump over. I'm going to do one more of these quick hits because I got 3 more questions for you, right?
Mhm.
So we'll
Yep.
see if you can do it as well as you did the first time. But
Yeah.
so now that you've got no Adrian Hutchinson, I'm going to say the Vikings are number one in that division.
Mhm.
And then I want you to tell me who's 2 and who's 3. Would you put Green Bay at 2 and Detroit at 3, or would you put Detroit at 2 and Green Bay at 3? And does that
Yeah.
make a difference to you as far as what you're going to do for the rest of the season?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's really close, but I'm still putting Detroit slightly ahead of Green Bay.
Okay.
I'd like to see, more consistency from Green Bay and from the quarterback position. So for me, it's still I like Detroit's chances. I'm very, very bullish on them. And I think they've got a nice formula there where they could kind of plug and play. Losing Hutchinson's huge. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I think they'll be okay. And I still put them at number 2 in that division. And honestly, they still may be knocking at number 1. I don't know that I'm fully sold on the complete turnaround of Sam Darnold over there in Minnesota. It's been great for the first few weeks, but the NFL becomes a copycat league, and somebody will figure out how to beat that offense, and it's going to continue. And it'll be up to Darnold and that coaching staff to adjust and make sure that they're staying ahead.
All right. So we're about to find out if Mitch is listening to us while he's in urgent care. The last update I got from him is he's still hanging out in the urgent care, waiting
Oh man.
to figure out what's going on with him. So here's what I'm going to say. It's Minnesota and then Green Bay and then Detroit.
Wow.
Especially with the loss of Hutchinson. Hutchinson is the heart and soul of that team.
Yeah.
It'd be like losing Love in Green Bay. If you lost Love in Green Bay, I'd say okay. Detroit is the clear number 2. But when you lose Hutchinson in Detroit, I'm going to say now Green Bay is the clear number 2, and I would be really, really tempted to punt on this season and see what I can get if I trade a few of these other 1-year type guys or maybe 2-year type guys and see what I can get. Can you get younger? Can you get faster? Can you get stronger? Can you get better? And basically tell your fan base, hey, we're gonna punt on this season. Our heart and soul is now gone, but when he gets healed up, we're gonna be faster, stronger, and better coming back next season. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how all this works. So I've got
Yeah.
3. No, go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, buddy.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, no doubt. It's going to
Wow,
be
that doesn't.
what they do.
I need you, if you're going to agree with me a lot, I need you to talk to my wife, to see if maybe you can get her to agree with me a lot. All right, let's see if
Yeah.
we can help each other out a little bit here.
Yeah.
So
No promises.
no promises, right? She won't listen to you anyway. I mean, anyway, so I love her to death. Quick hits part 2, right?
Yeah.
So here we go. 3 basic sentences. I'll shoot them out there to you. You tell me which one of those 3 that you want to talk about, and then we'll take 60 seconds to do so, and then we'll jump into the last part. We're going to do our college football here in just a second.
Great.
First one, 32%. 32% of the New Orleans Saints roster is on injured reserve right now. 32%. The Giants quarterback, Daniel Jones, has not thrown a touchdown pass at MetLife Stadium in 652 days. 652 days he's not thrown a touchdown pass at his home stadium.
A long
Absolutely
time.
crazy. That's a really long time. And the last one, it'll be interesting to see what you think about this one. I like this one. If I were you, this is the one I would pick. But you're the guest of honor. You pick whichever one you want. Amazon Prime does not allow any political ads during their Thursday night football games. They have turned down millions of dollars, and they have said, and they will continue to say, they are not going to allow any political ads during their Thursday night football game. So which one you want to talk about? You want to go with the 32% of the Saints? You want to go with Daniel Jones and his inability to throw a touchdown pass? Or you want to look at Amazon Prime and how they don't do political ads on Thursday night football? Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take Daniel Jones. Just because, again, being a New York sports fan, I follow the Giants as well. And yeah, it's been fascinating to see just the polar opposite that is Daniel Jones away from MetLife versus at MetLife. I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but it's almost exactly flipped when you look at his touchdowns and interceptions on the road versus at MetLife Stadium. The guy's an absolute superstar away from home. So obviously begs the question of why. So you think about it. We talked a little bit about it with the Mets, and you've got the pressure cooker that is New York. The New York Giants are the flagship football franchise in New York. They're in their 100th season. It's a landmark season. Daniel Jones is under center. He's also suffered some injuries at MetLife. So who knows what's going on in between the ears. And that's really the only explanation is it's got to be mental, because I don't see Brian Daboll calling a different sort of game between MetLife and on the road. And it's just some of the decisions you see are just, completely out of character for what you would think you're getting with Daniel Jones. One example against the Bengals this past week, Giants are driving, they're in the red zone, tried to throw it out of the end zone, and he threw it straight up in the air, middle of the field, got intercepted. So, putting 7 points on the board against the Bengals defense that was suspect at best coming in is just not acceptable. Daboll talked about that after the game. He is a good coach, took a lot of the blame and shouldered that himself and said, you could blame me. But at the end of the day, the quarterback's got to perform, and he's got to step up and lead his team. Now, I really like Daniel Jones. Last time we were together and talking about football, you asked me, would I prefer Daniel Jones or Aaron Rodgers coming into this year? As now I'd probably say C, none of the above, but I don't think that's an option. But I had said, Aaron Rodgers, but I really don't want to say that. And I still don't want to say that. I think Daniel Jones works really hard. He's kept his mouth shut, in terms of the opposite effect with the media, even though the owner of the Giants will tell you they did everything they can to break him with, multiple coordinators, multiple head coaches, dealing with all these injuries. And now
about 10 seconds, sir.
10 seconds left?
About 10 seconds, yep.
Okay. And you take Saquon Barkley out of the equation this year too. So, it's going to be really interesting to see if he could fix that. But I think it's going to go back to a little bit more conservative play calling to get him right at MetLife Stadium before they open things up again.
All right. So for your first time there doing the quick hits, man, you did a good job there, buddy. I'm proud of it. Yeah. Raise the roof a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's not go too far old school. Some of these kids won't understand. Who are
that's true. Right now. Sorry.
That's all right. All right. So college football checkdown is how we'll end everything today. Did the Ohio State versus Oregon game live up to the hype in your mind, Jason?
It did, and it did because of that finish. And I'm sure Ryan Day and the whole Ohio State staff and team are still kicking themselves over the end of that game. But I think it was really good. It was solid. It was great for the Big Ten. You had one of the new entrants to the conference really have their statement win relatively early on, and that being Oregon. To me, it was great. Lived up to the hype.
All right. So I don't know if you've seen it, and this is not going to be in the show notes for you, so don't be looking for it. I'm going to add this real quick. I don't know if you saw or not, the Oregon coach. Did you see how they called timeout, what they did, and how this controversy is coming around?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So they called timeout, right? Then they put a 12th guy on the field on purpose. They can go, oh, no, we didn't do that on purpose. All they want, right? They put the 12th guy on there on purpose so that they couldn't get a big play. Yep. And then they knew they were going to take the 5-yard penalty, which is nothing, right?
Right. Yep.
So do you have a problem with a coach manipulating the rules like that? What do you think the NCAA is going to do here? Because they're talking about maybe doing something to the program moving forward. Should they do something to them, or should they just change the rule and move on and say, okay, man, you got us?
Yeah, I honestly would like to see something happen. I don't know what that penalty is, but to me, it just, again, I'm going to sound like a purist here. It harms the integrity of the game. Just to say, all right, well, just throw that 12th guy out there, and we'll figure it out, and we just won't let a big play out. So
Right.
what's going to prevent you from throwing 20 guys on the field later? You're going to take a penalty anyway. So just put 5 guys along the goal line. Yeah, those sorts of things. It's like, how far do you take it? So
Right.
I hope they're able to nip it in the bud pretty quickly. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's some sort of sanctioned fine against the coaching staff. Again, it's hard to prove intent, but I think everybody's saying, yeah, they kind of knew what they were doing. Smart move, but yeah, to me, it just sort of flies in the face of the integrity of the game.
The problem that I've got with it is, doesn't that, if you're the coach and you make that call, aren't you telling your players, I'm not sure if you can even stop Ohio State. Let's cheat and make sure we stop them.
Good point. Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, he can't look them in the face in the locker room and be like, "Oh, you guys did a great job, even though I didn't think you could."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or I really thought you could, but just in case we threw
Right,
that
right.
tough
Just
guy
in,
out
just
there.
in case you can. I wanted to make sure. Right.
Yep.
All right, buddy. So yeah, I agree with you there. It's interesting, and I think it will be interesting to see what kind of fine, penalty, or something like that the NCAA does,
Yeah.
even if they don't do anything. So let's look at the ranking system, right? Um, and I teased this on some of the promos that I did earlier today. We are going to look at the biggest thing college football is doing wrong here in just a moment.
Yeah.
That's how we'll close out everything.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see if Jason agrees with me. He knows where I'm going to go with this because I'm sure he's read all the notes that I sent to him. So this will
Yep.
be interesting. So let's look at the top 10 right at the moment, right? And this
Mhm.
is, I believe, it's the coaches poll. So you got Texas, Oregon went up to number 2 with that win over Ohio State.
Mhm.
Penn State pulled out their win, even though they had to go into overtime to do it against an unranked USC team. They moved up to 3. Ohio State went to 4, and then it's Georgia, Miami, Alabama, LSU, Iowa State, and Clemson. Do you have a problem with anyone in that top 10 right at the moment as far as it stands now?
Yeah, I honestly not so much. I think I'd like to see a little bit more out of like the Iowa States of the world, but given their schedule, it's probably pretty hard to do that. Yeah, the Ohio State piece with a conference loss, granted against a tough team, is a little to me, but to be quite honest with you, I thought they could have just flip flopped Oregon and Ohio State and made the old number 2 3 and the old number 3 2 and gotten away with it. But Penn State kind of snuck in the middle there. So yeah, not overall. But yeah, it's really going to come down, I think, to the top 12 here over the next couple of weeks and who gets into the college football playoff. But I can't see anything that's glaringly wrong, at least.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's 100% what I want to look at here, the top 12, right? So we looked at the top 10. Again, that's Texas, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami. Alabama is at 7. LSU is at 8. Iowa State and Clemson round out the top 10. If you put the other two, which, as we're looking at those top 12, those are the ones that are going to be in the playoffs. You would have Tennessee at 11 and Notre Dame at 12. I'm upset here for a little bit because I want to be able to throw some of these unbeatens in there, right? You got BYU at 13, unbeaten. You got Indiana 6-0, and they're at 16. You got Pittsburgh, who was 6-0, and they're all the way down at 20. You got
Yeah.
Army and Navy as well. This is the first time that it's ever gone this far into a football season where both Army and Navy are undefeated. Army's at 23, Navy is at 25. How does the committee get some of these unbeatens a little higher, but yet not, how do I want to say this, not ruin the integrity of college football right now?
Yeah, I know it's a great question. I mean, the only way I could even kind of think
All
about
right, Jason,
that
I
is
think
oh, oh, can you hear me?
I got you. Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, as you think about the top 12, maybe you leave that 12th spot open for a wild card, if you will. And this way you could take one of those undefeated teams and put them in there. Now, granted, you don't ever want to be a fan of somebody ranked number 12 in that scenario, but there's always going to be somebody that's on the outside looking in. But I think that's really the only way to get around some of that if the season ends just as it is now and you've got these undefeated teams that are outside of the top 12, because it'd be great to see an undefeated get a chance and see what they could do in the playoffs.
And you're 100% right. No matter, I don't care if they make it a 25 college playoff. There's going to be the 26th team is going to be pissed, right? They're like, hey, we should have been 24 or whatever it is, right? So you're 100% right there. But I also have to say that I think I agree with, we got weeks left.
Mm-hmm.
Do I really think Indiana, Pittsburgh, Army, Navy, BYU, all these teams are going to go completely undefeated for the entire season? Yeah, no, I don't. So is there a rush to put these teams in the top 12? No, there's probably not. So I do see both sides of it.
Yep.
All right.
No,
So
you're right.
Get your opinion here on. I appreciate you saying I'm right, sir.
Yeah. Because you think about like an Indiana. There's no way Indiana finishes the season with their schedule, and if they are undefeated, they're going to be in the top 10 without a doubt with who they have to beat. Mike, did I lose you?
All right. I think I'm.
Yep, I got you. You're back.
All right. I don't know what that just did. If everybody's going to get knocked off, I have no idea what happened right there.
Oh, it looks like it might have happened again.
Entire time, Chase?
I think so. Yep, maybe not. All right. Well, I'm not sure if everybody could hear me or if it's controlled through Mike's computer, but if you can, one other thing I wanted to cover before we wrap up is just anything I'd want to change in college football. So for me, it revolves around the transfer portal. I don't like the change that the NCAA has put in place where players can move multiple times through the portal. I think that should be held down to one move. You move once through the transfer portal, that's it. And then you got to stay with your new school and see the rest of your college career through at that place. So the multiple moves, it just makes it really, really tough to keep track of who's where. Oh, Mike, you back?
Yeah, I think. All right, here we go, buddy. Have you been holding down the fort there all by your lonesome, buddy?
I've been trying. I don't know if anybody can hear me or not. I'm not sure if it's controlled through your computer or what, but I was just telling everybody that I changed one thing in college football, and that's the transfer portal and the ability for players to move around more than once. I don't like it. I keep it to one time, and after you move that one time, you're you're with that new team and you're going to see the rest of your college career through with that team. So that pretty much gets you caught up.
All right. So that's what is that what you're saying is the biggest thing that's wrong with college football right now?
To me, yes.
Okay. So I know that this is going to probably sound petty, but college football is doing something really, really wrong right at the moment, and I'm going to be interested to get Jason's take on it. When you guys are going back through it with us live, I appreciate it more. When I came back, more people are with us now, so maybe I should go away more and just leave it to you. I mean,
Yeah, there you
when I
go.
come back, there's more people here, so. I don't understand why college football is trying to compete with the NFL. So they have the majority of the football games on, a few on Friday and the majority of them on Saturday. And then they come out with their rankings on Sunday while all the NFL games are going on and nobody's talking about it. On
Yeah.
Monday, when all of the, the Pat McAfee's and Stephen A's yelling and screaming at people and everything else are talking about stuff. And even you and I are talking about stuff. We're kind of pushing college football back because the rankings are one of the biggest things to talk about right at the moment, and they come out while all the other NFL games are going on. And I know that the college football commissioner is listening to us right now because he always listens to the Sportz Truth. So
Excellent.
I am imploring you, wait until Tuesday to put your rankings out, or at least put one of them on Sunday. Maybe put the coaches poll on Sunday and put the other poll on Tuesday, or do something like that. You're competing with a big machine, and I think you're losing right now. So if it was me and I was running the show, I would make sure that college football is not putting their rankings out while the NFL games are going on. I think that's pretty dumb.
Yeah, I like the thought. I would want to keep something on Sunday though, because you even talk about Oregon and Ohio State. You got all that momentum from what happened in that game. What's going to happen to the rankings? And if you got to wait 3 days to see it, it's kind of like, wait, what happened again? Oh yeah, that's right. So maybe that's the way to get around that is, and especially with the CFP coming on board, you do maybe coaches polls on Sunday. And you release the new CFP rankings on Tuesday. This way you're kind of keeping that momentum through the rest of the week. And then it sets the stage for the preview for the following week's games when you get the new, CFP rankings or AP poll on that Tuesday.
Right. Jason, I tell you what, man, this internet thing is killing me. We're going to wrap this thing up real quick. So I haven't asked you this. I always ask Mitch. I want to make sure that we plug you away. How can people get a hold of you, Jason?
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Jason Crom 10. So Jason KROM as in Mary 10 on X. So please feel free to reach out, follow me, and it's been great, working with Mike and writing for the site. It's a lot of fun and a lot of great writers on the site and a lot of great material. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Mike. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever, man. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate you jumping on here kind of last minute and doing the entire thing instead of just one segment. You stayed with me, the entire time, unless we're having buffering problems here, and then you go away. That's nothing you're doing. So we're good to go.
All good.
I'll give you a minute or so here. You wanna wrap anything up, buddy? You wanna say anything else before we let you go?
No. I mean, it's an exciting time for sports. I hope everybody's enjoying it. You've got the Major League Baseball playoffs. You've got the NFL really ramping up, and for me, it's exciting. NBA right around the corner. So, everybody enjoy it. And again, thanks for tuning in.
That's right. So give us an update. What's the score right now, buddy?
Okay, 1 second. It is.
I caught him off guard.
Nope, 6-2, top of the ninth. Yankees ahead.
Yuck. All right. All right. I guess we can't ask for the little guy to continue to win. Eventually, these 300 million teams are going to just overtake him. So.
Yeah, not over yet, but not looking very good.
Right. Okay, guys. Well, look, we certainly appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Thank you all very much. Any suggestions or anything like that, hit us up on our main account. You can also go over to YouTube and watch this. And we'll be doing some Spotify stuff and things like that here in the near future. So we're really going to expand this particular podcast as you guys have all made this podcast successful, and we certainly appreciate it. As we always say to wrap everything up at the very end, thank you to Jason Chrome for being on with us. And for all of you guys tuning in, whether you watch it live or on some kind of a delay, we certainly appreciate that. And as we always say, the only thing that's fair in life is a baseball hit between the first and third base lines. Good night.